If you've lived in Massachusetts for a long time, there's a good chance you've passed places where entire towns once stood without ever knowing it. Families lived there for generations, and today, many of them are completely gone. These are 12 Massachusetts towns that disappeared, and what happened to them might stay with you. Number 12. Dogtown, Essex County. There is a place on Cape Ann that locals have been quietly afraid of for almost 200 years. No one built a sign for it. No one put it on a tour route, and yet it's sitting right there, a few miles from Gloucester, hidden in the forest, with a name that tells you exactly what happened to it. It's called Dogtown. In 1693, a group of settlers founded a community on a hill above Gloucester Harbor, deliberately inland, protected from the pirates and British warships that raided the Massachusetts coast. At its peak, more than 100 families lived there. Thriving families, Gloucester's most prominent citizens, a working community with shops, homes, and every reason to stay. Then the Revolutionary War ended. The pirate threat faded. New roads opened up along the coast, and every family that could afford to leave did exactly that. What remained were the ones with nowhere to go, widows whose husbands never came back from sea, freed slaves with no land and no money, drifters and outcasts that the rest of Gloucester preferred not to think about. Stories spread fast. Some of the remaining women were said to practice witchcraft. One, Thomasine Younger, known across Cape Ann as the Queen of the Witches, reportedly cursed farmers' oxen unless they paid her a toll as they passed through. Most of them paid. By 1828, the village was nearly empty. The very last person was a freed black man named Cornelius Finson, known locally as Black Neil. He had nowhere to go, so he stayed, alone, in an abandoned settlement until the winter of 1830, when he was found barely alive in a cellar hole, his feet badly frostbitten. He was carried to the poorhouse in Gloucester and never came back. The houses rotted, the cellar holes stayed. The dog's residents had left behind went feral, roaming the rocky moors in packs, howling through the night. That's how the place got its name. During the Depression, a local economist named Roger Babson hired unemployed stonecutters to carve motivational phrases into the boulders across the hillside. Be true. Never try, never win. Keep out of debt. Those words are still there today, carved into the rocks of a ghost town where the last residents were witches and wild dogs. Number 11. Long Point, Barnstable County. If you've ever driven to the very end of Provincetown and looked out at that lighthouse sitting alone at the tip of Cape Cod, there used to be a town out there, 200 people, a post office, a bakery, a schoolhouse, 9 windmills spinning in the ocean wind, and when the time came to leave, they did something that has never happened anywhere else in American history. Long Point was settled in 1818, built around some of the richest fishing waters on the East Coast. By the 1840s, it was genuinely thriving, 38 fishing families hauling in cod, mackerel, and lobster. Lobsters sold for 2 cents each back then. Children ran between the boats, salt and wood smoke in the air. A full community at the very edge of the world. But reaching Provincetown from Long Point meant a 4.5-mile walk across open sand dunes. No road, no bridge. In a bad storm, no way in or out at all. By the 1850s, cheap New York salt had undercut their salt works. The fish were thinning. The isolation, the erosion, the constant threat that a big storm could swallow the whole point, it all became too much. So they left, but they took their houses with them. A local deacon loaded each home onto flat wooden barges and floated them across Provincetown Harbor, all 30 structures. One account from the time says the move was so smooth that women didn't stop cooking dinner while their houses sailed across the water. Those houses are still standing in Provincetown's West End today. Look for the small blue and white plaques on their fronts. A houseboat with Long Point light in the background. You're looking at a house that crossed the harbor. The lighthouse still stands on the point. Everything else is sand and memory. Number 10. Davis Mine Village, Franklin County. Walk into the forest at the edge of a tiny town called Rowe near the Vermont border, and you'll find 150 cellar holes in the trees, perfectly spaced, moss-covered, an entire neighborhood frozen in place, the forest slowly taking it back. In 1882, geology students from Amherst College found iron pyrite, fool's gold, pushing up through the rocks in Rowe. A New York entrepreneur named Herbert Jerome Davis bought the land immediately and launched the Davis Sulfur Ore Company. Within a year, the mine was pulling out 20 tons of ore a day. By 1890, a full company village had grown around the shaft. Workers' housing, a tramway, a post office, a blacksmith shop. Families living and working deep in the western Massachusetts hills. The Davis mine became the largest pyrite mine in Massachusetts. In 1911, the mine collapsed. Nobody was hurt, but the underground structure was too damaged to fix and too expensive to rebuild. The company walked away, workers were let go, buildings emptied one by one. By 1937, the forest had reclaimed everything, except for one standing blacksmith shop and those 150 holes where homes used to be. They're still there. Walk through that forest today, and you'll step into them before you even realize you've found a town. Number 9. Haywardville, Middlesex County. Millions of Massachusetts residents have walked the trails of the Middlesex Fells Reservation north of Boston. Almost none of them know that one of the most consequential industrial discoveries in American history happened right there in those woods. Haywardville was a mill village along a brook in the Fells in the mid-1800s. 4 working mills, workers' homes, families whose entire lives depended on the water flowing through that brook. One of those mills is where Charles Goodyear and his partner, Nathaniel Hayward, the man the village was named for, perfected vulcanized rubber, the breakthrough that eventually put tires on every car, truck, and bicycle in America. It happened in a forgotten mill in the woods north of Boston. What ended Haywardville had nothing to do with the market or the weather. The neighboring towns of Medford, Malden, and Melrose quietly lobbied the state to reroute the water rights feeding Haywardville's mills. No water, no mills, no mills, no village. By 1870, it was dying. By 1894, the Commonwealth bought the land and turned it into the park you can walk through today. The old mill foundation is still in the woods. Stone walls, trail markers, and not a single sign anywhere telling you what was invented there. Number 8. Normga, Middlesex County. There is a 38-foot stone tower standing on the bank of the Charles River in Waltham that almost nobody can explain. It doesn't fit anything around it. It has no obvious purpose. And the story behind it is one of the strangest in Massachusetts history. For centuries, European explorers returned from the New World with stories of a magnificent city somewhere in the northeastern wilderness, great buildings, great wealth, a civilized population along a powerful river. They called it Normga. It appeared on maps. Expeditions were launched. For 200 years, educated people believed a lost city existed somewhere in what is now Massachusetts. By the 1800s, serious historians had dismissed it as legend. But Eben Norton Horsford hadn't gotten that message. Horsford was a Harvard chemistry professor who had invented baking powder and made a significant fortune from it. In the 1880s, he became completely and unshakably convinced that Normga was real, a Viking city, and that it was buried right there along the Charles River in Waltham. He excavated for years, published books, lectured at Harvard. He was absolutely certain. In 1889, he built the tower as a monument to his discovery and held a public ceremony attended by hundreds. No Viking city was ever found. No credible evidence has ever been uncovered. Normga was almost certainly a Native American name for the general region, nothing more. The tower still stands on the Charles River today, a monument to a city that never existed, built by a brilliant man who spent his fortune convinced that it did. Number 7. Catamount, Franklin County. Before you've heard of this village, consider this. The tradition of flying the American flag over every school in this country had to start somewhere. It didn't start in Boston or Philadelphia or any city you'd think to name. It started in Catamount. In 1812, as America went to war with Britain for the second time, a schoolteacher in this remote mountain village in Coleraine raised the flag over the schoolhouse and refused to take it down. The gesture spread. By year's end, schools across the country were doing the same. Catamount was first. The village sat on a steep mountainside, beautiful land, but brutal to work. Rocky soil, brutal winters, no easy roads. For decades it held on. A church, a school, a mill, families who knew no other life. But as the century went on, The valleys below grew more connected and more prosperous. The young people left, not all at once, slowly, the way a fire dies. By the early 1900s, the village was gone. In 1967, the state folded what remained into Catamount State Forest. All that's left is a single stone marker at the schoolhouse site. The village that started one of America's oldest school traditions has no residents, no buildings, and no sign telling you what happened there. If this is the kind of Massachusetts history you didn't know you needed, subscribe. We're here every week. Number 6. Prescott, Hampshire County. By the time the state came for Prescott, only 18 people were still living there. Prescott had been a real town once. Incorporated in 1822, 750 residents at its peak, farms and churches and neighbors who had known each other their whole lives. But over a century, it slowly emptied out. Young people left for the cities. Farms went quiet. By the 1930s, only 18 people remained. Those 18 had more history behind them than most towns twice their size. Prescott was where Daniel Shays had lived, and where the Conkey Tavern stood, the exact tavern where Shays' rebellion was planned in 1786. That uprising, farmers from western Massachusetts rising against debt collectors and the courts after the Revolution, shook the country hard enough that historians credit it with pushing the founders to write a stronger constitution. None of that protected Prescott. Boston needed water. The state condemned the Swift River Valley. On April 28, 1938, Prescott ceased to exist. The Conkey Tavern is at the bottom of the Quabbin Reservoir. Daniel Shays' house is at the bottom of the Quabbin Reservoir, and those last 18 people were the ones who had to walk away. Number 5. Greenwich, Hampshire County. Greenwich had been a town for 184 years when the state took it. 184 years of the same families, farming the same fields, being baptized in the same church, burying their parents in the same cemetery, a post office, a school, a mill, neighbors whose grandparents had been neighbors too. In 1927, the state legislature condemned the entire Swift River Valley for Boston's water supply. Greenwich had until April 27, 1938 to get out. Over a decade watching the government buy the land around them acre by acre, tear down buildings that had stood since the 1700s, and move the bodies from the town cemetery to a burial ground outside the valley. The state offered $108 per acre. The holdouts were eventually offered $56. That was the price of 184 years. Today and where there's an overlook above the Quabbin. On a clear day, you can see the outline of what used to be the center of Greenwich far below the surface. There's no sign on that overlook telling you what you're looking at. Number 4. Dana, Hampshire County. Dana is the only Quabbin town you can still visit, and what you find there doesn't feel like a park. It feels like something that hasn't finished disappearing yet. The town sat at a higher elevation than the others, so when the reservoir filled, part of the road system and town common stayed above water. The old road off Route 32A in Petersham is closed to cars. You walk it 2 miles through dense forest, and you arrive at what was once the center of a living Massachusetts community. The roads are still paved. You walk through trees on a 2-lane road and slowly realize the forest on both sides is growing through what used to be front yards. The road takes you to Dana's town common, a field with stone foundations in the grass and memorial markers showing exactly where the town hall stood, where the church was, where the hotel was. And from the common, every old street, Main Street, Elm Street, Pleasant Street, runs straight down into the water. Paved roads going directly into the reservoir, still there, still paved, going nowhere. One of the last photographs ever taken in Dana shows the fire department in 1938. Men in uniform in front of their truck. They are smiling. They knew exactly what was coming. Number 3. Whitewash Village, Barnstable County. 8 miles off the coast of Chatham, there's an island that cannot hold its own shape, splitting apart in blizzards, rejoining the mainland in storms, reshaping itself every few decades. The people who once lived on it had a reputation as dark as the water around it. The island is Monomoy. The town was called Whitewash Village. It grew in the early 1800s around a natural harbor called the Powder Hole on Monomoy's inner shore. 200 people at its peak, a A school, a tavern, 2 wharves, boats going out every morning. Lobsters were so cheap and plentiful back then that Massachusetts jails fed them to prisoners. These families lived off what the rest of the state considered unfit to eat. Monomoy sits on some of the most dangerous water on the entire East Coast. Shifting sandbars and ripping currents have claimed hundreds of ships over the centuries, and some of the men of Whitewash Village, known as wreckers, made that work for them. When ships ran aground, they were first on the water stripping the cargo. Some accounts say the signal lights along the shore were tampered with on dark nights to steer vessels onto the shoals. History or legend, no one can say for certain, but the reputation stuck. Around 1860, a powerful storm pushed sand directly into the powder hole and blocked it completely. Overnight, no boat could get in or out. The harbor that gave the village its reason to exist was gone. Residents tried to rebuild. By 1876, they were finished trying. Monomoy is a federal wildlife refuge today. You need a boat to get there. The lighthouse still stands, and at low tide, if you know where to look, you can find the foundations of the village still in the sand, like the island itself hasn't quite let go. Number 2. West Boylston, Worcester County. Most people think the flooding of the Quabbin Valley in 1938 was the first time Boston took someone else's town to get its water. It wasn't. Boston had already done it once, 30 years earlier, and almost no one remembers. In 1896, West Boylston was a genuine industrial town in Worcester County. 6 textile mills, 8 schools, 4 churches, a hotel, 1,700 people who had built a prosperous community over nearly a century. The state chose it as the site of the Wachusett Reservoir, the same logic as the Quabbin, just smaller. Boston was growing and needed water. West Boylston sat at the junction of 3 rivers. The math was simple. The state took 2,200 acres, more than any other town affected. 300 homes demolished, 6 mills shut down when their water source was rerouted. The French, Canadian, and Irish workers who had built their lives there packed up and left. The state paid 60 cents on the dollar and promised $12,000 a year in lost tax revenue forever. That promise, at least, they kept. One thing survived. The old stone church, built in 1892, sat on a hill just high enough to stay above the waterline. It was abandoned the moment the flooding began and stood alone on that hillside for nearly a century. No congregation, no road leading to it, no reason to exist anymore. It's been restored. You can see it from Route 140 today, a single stone church above the water, the only thing left standing. West Boylston still exists as a town, but it gets its water from 2 wells. The reservoir is right there. The water flows east to Boston, and the town of Ware, which sits 3 miles from the Quabbin, has documented water quality problems today, 3 miles from 412 billion gallons of clean water. None of it for them. When people in Boston are asked where their water comes from, most say, the faucet. They have no idea. Number 1. Enfield, Hampshire County. On the night of April 27, 1938, more than 2,000 people crowded into a town hall in Hampshire County to say goodbye to a place that would be gone by morning. Enfield was the largest of the 4 Quabbin towns, 1,100 residents, mills, and factories along the Swift River, a railroad stop, a main street that had been running for generations. And Boston needed the valley it sat in. The farewell ball was organized by the Enfield Fire Department. Every ticket sold. The people who couldn't get in stood on the lawn outside and danced to the music drifting through the windows. Before the dancing started, the department organized one final parade. A single old fire engine, pulled by horses draped in black, moved slowly down Main Street. A band played behind it. On both sides of the road, the storefronts were boarded up, windows dark, most buildings already demolished. The parade moved through a ghost town that was still, for a few more hours, technically a town. Inside, people danced until midnight. Free beer flowed. People laughed and wept at the same time. At midnight, on April 28th, the towns were legally dissolved. They ceased to exist. One person who was there wrote, "Muffled sobs could be heard from all parts of the hall, and many hardened men were noted making hurried grasps for their handkerchiefs." The flooding began months later. By 1946, the Quabbin was full. The Enfield Town Hall, where 2,000 people danced until midnight on the last night of its existence. is somewhere at the bottom of the reservoir right now. Drop a comment and tell me what town you're from. I read every single one, and if this kind of history is worth something to you, subscribe.